Hello and welcome to my first ever webinar with Rising Youth. My name is Aaliyah Mahboubi and today I'll be talking about leading with confidence and humility. Before we get started, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement, acknowledging that I reside on the territories of the Lillooet, Musqueam, Sechelt, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Before we start the webinar, I'd like to just tell you a bit of what it is. I hope you take this webinar as like friendly advice rather than a lecture or a how-to guide. And I hope that by the end of this webinar, you'll have some tools to help you along your journey in becoming a humble and confident leader. I should say too that I am not an expert in leadership. I am learning more every day. And in fact, everything I have in this webinar has come from the experience of others, whether through reading their stories, their biographies, their research papers, or watching their videos. I've really learned and picked up on a whole bunch of techniques from other people, the experts and professionals who've been in the leadership business for so long. So yeah, I'm learning too, just like you. Okay, Malala. The reason I wanted to start off with Malala is because she, to me, is the definition of a confident and humble leader, as is Mother Teresa and Stephen Hawking. These are all like superhumans that we all look up to. And although I'll never come close to these amazing people, it's nice to have someone in mind when starting on your leadership journey. It's a little bit inspiring. And it also is a demonstration of how great leadership can be when used well and, in a healthy way. So I thought I would give those people as an example. When we ask the question, what is leading with confidence and humility, immediately what comes to mind is take responsibility. So take ownership over your actions, whether they're good or bad. Some of the greatest leaders I've ever known are people who can step up to the plate when times are tough and claim ownership over the decision they made. And it shows your team that you are confident in taking the losses and also taking the wins. So taking responsibility is a really good practice for yourself and for your team. Another thing is being open to changing your mind about a decision. Consider escalation of commitment. A lot of times in media, I see that bosses are people who make decisions and stick to them under all circumstances. This can be known as escalation of commitment. It's when you are so invested in a decision that you have trouble changing your mind. But I think that coming to a point and reevaluating whether your decision was a good one and then changing course is a really healthy practice for leaders. And there's this misconception that it makes you a weak leader when you change your mind about something you had initially decided. But really it shows your team that you're confident in changing course. And it allows them to feel more comfortable in bringing up their own concerns. In the end, it just helps your project and it helps you succeed. Team comfort. I had to include Toby here from The Office. But team comfort is important. At the end of the day, you are your team and your team is you. They reflect your leadership, but without them, nothing could work. So team comfort is definitely a factor to value for sure. It also encourages them to do their best too when they know that they're being valued. Take credit and give credit. I'm sure we've all run into the situation where we haven't been credited properly, or maybe we haven't taken credit, but I can say that a while ago I used to think that taking credit was something that wasn't humble to do. And so I would give credit to other people and sometimes refuse it myself. But to be honest, that is not a good definition of humility. Taking credit is such a wonderful practice. It allows you to feel more comfortable in your role as a leader. And also, again, like all those other qualities, shows other people that you are confident in your role as a manager or leader. It's almost as important as giving credit. Giving credit to people allows your team to feel valued and almost propels them into working harder just by giving credit. It's such an easy thing to do. So certainly, I would put that high on the priority list. Learning to fail comfortably. This is so counterintuitive to me because I struggle with this all the time. But learning to see failure as a stepping stone rather than a step back is such an asset, and I found that it helps you through life and through leadership. So yeah, learning to fail comfortably. Easier said than done. The Pottery Experiment. This is really just a cool insight into how failure can actually help you. But if you want to learn how to produce great quality, produce large quantity. So there's this experiment that was run, and basically it involved a beginner's ceramics student, or like a group of students that were beginners in ceramics, and they were split into two groups. One focused on quality of pots, and one focused on quantity of pots. And in the end, what was discovered was that those who focused on the quantity rather than the quality actually created better pots. And it's because they practiced, they failed, and they could improve because they practiced. Whereas the group that focused on quality was so hyper-focused and detail-oriented that they weren't able to improve. So in that case, learning to fail actually helped them succeed. And this idea can be taken and applied to all walks of life, including business. How to start, the golden question. These are some points I thought of. Number one is research. I would say reading is the best way to go. Read as much as you could possibly read. And I think it gives you a good opportunity to reflect individually and also just learn a whole bunch. So reading specifically. Talking to people. This is totally necessary for leadership. I don't think it's possible to be a leader without talking to people, but it doesn't have to be flamboyant and high energy the way extroverts do it. Introverts are so great at talking to people, and it can be very casual and just like genuine and quaint. So talking to people, necessary, but not specific to personality type. Rejection, like I said, eat, sleep, and breathe it if you can. It's so difficult, I've found, but it'll serve you so well. Attending events, this one's really good to do. You'll meet lots of people, and the worst that can happen is your time gets wasted. The best that can happen is you get an opportunity from it. Putting passion into practice. The reason I say this is because it can be easy to feel discouraged in the beginning when you're starting in your leadership journey. But if you're passionate about what you're leading, it's really hard to burn out that spark. So, yeah, I would definitely say be passionate about what you're leading. Why does it matter? This is a question that's probably on your mind. Why does good leadership matter in the first place? And I found this picture on the internet, and I thought it described it pretty well. But the reason is because we're not in an industrial age anymore, where leadership is super declarative and bossy and separate from workers. But we're not at that assembly line, and we don't accept that type of leadership anymore. And so I think good leadership and fair leadership is almost a requirement nowadays. So yeah, I would definitely say that that's why it's important. The challenges, because there are always many challenges. Number one is that it's impossible to make everyone happy. Although it might be like a goal of the leader to ensure that everyone, or at least the majority is happy, there will always be like outliers who don't feel the same way about a decision. That's okay. Learn to accept that, respect them, but at the end of the day, it won't be impossible to just please everybody. And so I would remember that. Improvement requires patience. Good things take time. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but be nice to yourself, be patient with yourself. You will make mistakes. I make so many mistakes daily, but the fact that I can take a step back and accept them and then move on has helped me so much in my journey. Nerves and anxiety. This one's more difficult because it's more physical and it's hard to control nerves, but some tips I can give that have helped me is number one, to recognize that it's normal to feel nerves and that other people are probably feeling the same way that you are if you're feeling nervousness or anxiety. Number two is to realize that the stakes are low. Like, the worst that can happen from putting your hand up in your lecture hall is that you get the answer wrong. And then people forget about it the next day. So to remind yourself that the stakes are super low is very much a help. And I've found that could be like an aid for me when I'm feeling nervous. But yeah, this advice is totally advice that I should be taking myself, because it's, again, easier said than done. Accepting and appreciating the rejection. By appreciating the rejection, we accept it. I've learned that seeing rejection as that stepping stone can be so just like pivotal in your journey, because it allows you to get less hung up on the rejection, and instead to like use it as just like an accelerator. And it's helped me immensely in my own experience. Talking about my experience, okay. My experience with leadership has been, not the most extensive yet. I'm still learning and trying different things, but in my experience, I have had to use leadership. My first example is Rising Youth, the STEAM conference that I co-ran in December. I applied for a Rising Youth grant and was able to put this Quantum Leaps conference together with my good friend, and it required lots of communication, it required teamwork, collaboration, and I had to, use this as a chance to fix some of my own leadership qualities and to improve it. So this was a good experience. Model UN. Okay, all Model UN kids probably know that Model UN sort of forces you into using your voice and being a leader. You either like sit there silently or you speak, I find, and it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. So in some ways, it's good to engage in activities that maybe you wouldn't usually do, because it can encourage you and nudge you into leadership a little bit. Animation panel. This was the definition of putting passion into practice. I love creativity. I'm very much a creative and visual person, and so my friend and I ran a animation panel where we invited a whole bunch of industry professionals to come speak about their experience, and it required a lot of communication and rejection. Like, the amount of emails that I got saying, no, I can't, and I'm busy, and some people didn't even reply. Just the amount of rejection we dealt with during this time was a lot, but it taught us a lot about event planning as well. Reading. I've mentioned this, but reading is like your best friend. I've read so many great books this summer. Some of them include The Myth of the Nice Girl by Fran Hauser, The Road to Character by David Brooks, Leadership is Language by David L. Marquette, and this page here is a list of some great books to help you too. So this brings us to the end of our webinar here. Please email me if you want to chat about what you're up to. If you want to just be in contact, I'd be more than happy to answer. In fact, it would bring me a lot of joy if you emailed me, or you could DM me on Instagram. So yeah, I would love to chat with you. And just a big thank you as well for spending your time on this webinar. I know it took a while and it's a lot of content to digest, but I'm really just appreciative that you decided to watch this. And to Rising Youth, thank you for giving me this platform to make this presentation. Not only did I get to present some ideas, but I also learned a lot throughout this process. So big thank you to Rising Youth and to anyone who decided to watch today. I'll be looking forward to hearing from you, and again, thank you so much. Bye.